Asterisk. She bent down to clean the Apache's heavy machine gun, dust clinging to her gloves. It was just another day on base, just another maintenance check until the pilot's eyes caught something stitched on her sleeve. A patch, not just any patch, but one that made his blood run cold. He froze, staring, because he knew what it meant, and why no one on that base should ever be wearing it. The desert stretched endlessly under a blazing sun, the heat shimmering off the tarmac like a restless mirage. Rows of Apache helicopters sat in silence, their shadows stretching long across the ground, looking both powerful and menacing. To Amelia, however, they were more than machines, they were guardians. She had always felt a strange bond with them, as if each rotor, each panel, and each gun carried its own heartbeat. On this day, she walked across the flight line with her toolbox in hand, her boots crunching against the gravel. Amelia was not like the others on base. While most ground crew members treated their tasks as just another job, she poured herself into every detail. She checked each bolt twice, wiped the sand from every joint, and ran her fingers along the smooth metal as if reassuring the beast that it was cared for. Today was no different. She climbed onto the Apache's frame with practiced ease, pulling out a rag to clean the long barrel of its machine gun. Dust clung stubbornly to the steel, but she worked patiently, humming a quiet tune only she could hear. For her, maintenance was almost a ritual. The Apache wasn't just a tool of war. It was a living reminder of sacrifice, discipline, and strength. She often thought about how many lives depended on the machine she now cared for. Every detail mattered. If she missed a crack, a loose wire, or a jammed weapon, it could cost someone their life in combat. That weight of responsibility never left her, and she embraced it with steady hands. She had no idea that within moments her calm routine would be interrupted. Something as small as a stitched piece of fabric on her sleeve was about to change the entire rhythm of her day. Captain Hayes walked across the flight line with the steady, confident stride of a man who had seen too much sky. The heat pressed down on him, but he barely noticed. His mind was already ahead, running through pre-flight checks, weather, conditions, and the mission brief waiting for him later in the day. To him, the Apache was more than a machine, it was an extension of himself. Every rattle, every vibration in the cockpit was as familiar as the beating of his own heart. He spotted Amelia working before she noticed him, bent over the mounted gun, her hair tied neatly under her cap. She looked almost too small beside the massive helicopter. Hayes had always respected the ground crew, though he rarely showed it with words. Pilots might fly the birds, but it was people like Amelia who kept them alive. Without their dedication, no mission could ever take off. He allowed himself a faint smile as he watched her wipe the dust from the weapon with precise, careful strokes. But then something caught his eye. His smile vanished. He slowed his pace, squinting at her sleeve. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, the glare of the sun distorting his vision. But no, the patch was there, bold against the fabric of her uniform. It wasn't their unit's insignia, and it wasn't one authorized by the base. Hayes froze mid-step, his breath hitched as recognition slammed into him like a shockwave. That symbol wasn't supposed to exist here. Not anymore. For a long moment he just stood still, staring at it, unable to move. The desert heat, the noise of distant engines, even the weight of his gear seemed to disappear. All he could see was that patch, and the memories it carried. Amelia finally noticed the shadow that had stopped just a few steps away. She turned her head and caught Captain Hayes staring at her arm, his face stiff, his jaw set as if carved from stone. For a second, she thought she had done something wrong with the maintenance. She looked back at the machine gun, then at him, puzzled. "Something wrong, sir?" she asked, wiping her gloved hands against her uniform. Hayes didn't answer right away. His eyes were locked on the patch stitched neatly onto her sleeve. It was dark, shaped like a winged skull with lightning bolts across it. Amelia had always, "I thought it was just an old design, something her father once wore and passed down to her." To her, it was a piece of family memory, nothing more. But to Hayes, it was something else entirely. His chest tightened. He had seen that symbol before, years ago, far from home. It belonged to a group no one talked about, openly a unit whispered about in the shadows of classified briefings. They weren't regular soldiers. They weren't even supposed to exist. The last time Hayes had seen that emblem was in a burning desert village, stitched on the jackets of men who vanished after unleashing chaos. The memory was like a scar that never healed. "You. Where did you get that?" Hayes finally managed, his voice low, almost strained. Amelia blinked, surprised by the intensity in his tone. She glanced at the patch, then back at him. It was my father's," she said simply, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. "He gave it to me before he disappeared." Hayes felt a cold shiver crawl down his spine. The patch wasn't just fabric, it was a door to a past he had tried to bury. The air between them grew heavy, as if the desert heat had suddenly thickened. Hayes stepped closer, his boots grinding against the gravel, his eyes never leaving the patch. His voice was sharper now, laced with urgency. "Your father who? Was he?" Amelia shifted uneasily, not expecting the question. She hesitated, her gaze dropping for a moment before she answered. His name was Daniel Cross. He never talked much about his service. All I know is, one day he left on a mission, and never came back. They told us he was gone, but there was no body, no answers. She touched the patch gently with her fingers. This was all I had left of him. Hayes felt his pulse quicken. The name struck him like thunder. Daniel Cross. He remembered it from whispered reports and classified files, the kind that vanished after being read. Cross wasn't just a soldier, he was part of the Ghost Squad, a unit erased from the books, a team sent into missions that no one was supposed to survive. The men wore that very emblem, a mark that was never meant to be seen outside the shadows. Hayes clenched his jaw, the weight of old memories pressing down on him. He remembered the ambush, the smoke, the chaos, how that squad had disappeared into the dark, leaving questions that no one dared to ask. And now, years later, the daughter of one of those men was here, standing before him with the same mark stitched onto her sleeve. Amelia noticed the change in his expression, the storm gathering in his eyes. You know something about it, don't you? She asked quietly. Hayes didn't reply. He couldn't, not yet, because the truth about that patch was dangerous. And if Amelia's father really was who he thought, then the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The sound of another Apache roaring to life nearby filled the air, its blades chopping the wind, but Hayes hardly noticed. His focus remained fixed on Amelia, her calm yet searching eyes holding a truth she didn't fully understand. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. Amelia, he said carefully, that patch isn't just a keepsake. It belonged to a squad that should never have existed. They were called Ghost Talon. Men who went where no one else would go, missions no one could ever admit. And your father, Daniel Cross, was one of them. Her lips parted in shock. The name Ghost Talon meant nothing to her, but the weight in Hayes's voice made her realize it was bigger than she imagined. You telling me he was alive? That he was part of this? She asked, her voice trembling between hope and fear. Hayes nodded grimly. He wasn't just part of it, he was one of their best, and if he disappeared, it wasn't because he failed. It was because he knew something dangerous enough that they had to erase him. Amelia clutched her arm where the patch sat, her father's memory now alive in a way that made her chest tighten. For years she had thought the emblem was nothing more than a symbol of pride, but now it felt like a key to secrets buried deep in the shadows. Hayes placed a hand on the cold steel of the Apache, his eyes narrowing. If that patch is here, then someone wanted it to be found. And that means your father's story isn't finished. Amelia stared at him, her heart pounding. The routine day she had started with was gone. In its place stood a new truth. Her father's ghost still lingered, and now his secrets had found their way back through her. The silence that followed said everything. Nothing on this base would ever be the same again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share with your friends. Subscribe to Deep Wounds for more powerful and suspenseful stories every day.